The general brought back a woman and a man. Honestly, coming back is one thing. But why bring people along? Bringing people is bad enough. But why did he have to bring back my old flame? He looked up at the sky, feeling somewhat awkward. I lowered my head to look at the ground, also feeling a bit awkward. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. My dear husband has returned. I kept my head down, scooping rice from my bowl. So he's back, what's the big deal? It'd be strange if he didn't come back at all. No, I saw it with my own eyes. She even shared a horse with the general. Is this the general's wife? A soft, delicate voice spoke up, its gentleness utterly foreign to the frontier. I froze, turning to look, my gaze momentarily faltering. A woman stood gracefully behind me, her beauty like flowers and moonlight, tall and elegant. The general held her arm, their demeanor intimate, noticing my gaze. He paused slightly and took half a step back. Of course, my dazed expression wasn't because of these two, but because of another person standing beside them. I know this person quite well. In fact, the story is actually quite simple. That year, I had just escaped from that den of wolves and spent over 10 days wandering before unexpectedly crossing paths with my old employer. I truly wished to leave Kyoto behind and find another place to settle, but I have nothing to my name. The only things of any use I possess are a few drops of ink for writing on the young lady's behalf and a couple of taels of silver. Even my former employer has her troubles. She's short on capable hands. Summoning my courage, I offered my services. I am Shiji, once the chief maid of the Duke's mansion's eldest young lady, somewhat versed in poetry and books, skilled in calculations, and a candidate for the position of housekeeper. While protecting my mistress, I fell into the river. The current was swift, and unfortunately, we were separated. The Duke's mansion has strict rules. A maid like me, missing for several months, would likely face death if I returned. I beg you to give me a job. Naturally, I omitted the part about my scheming. My heart has truly grown wild. I simply want to exploit a favor for gain. For some reason, my former employer agreed to my request, but this assignment was beyond my expectations, investigating a case, and not just any case, but one involving imperial examination fraud. Me, though utterly perplexed, I still accepted the assignment. What followed was quite straightforward. I leveraged just a tiny bit of connections to get into the Imperial Academy. I could tell he looked down on me, and frankly, I didn't think much of him either. He even teamed up with other students to set me up. Have you ever cried over a flower? I did, he tattled. I got punished with copying texts, and as I copied late into the night, the more I thought about it, the angrier and more wronged I felt, so I decided to trip him up in return. He fought back, and I kept subtly messing with him. We went back and forth, but of course, we ended up making peace. Though it started off a bit unpleasant, it turned out to be a case of no discord, no concord. Those were truly happy times. If only I hadn't had other matters to attend to. Both my master and I are considered vulnerable. Therefore, to accomplish this, we must seek external assistance. This is also one of the reasons my master arranged for me to enter the Imperial College. Tell me, when our former classmates are unjustly imprisoned and barred from official examinations for life, how can you all stand by and do nothing? Today it is I who am imprisoned, but tomorrow, could it be any of you present? When the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. At this moment, just a single spark is enough to ignite these young scholars. Therefore, I must die. I never expected Shen Qianglin to visit me at that moment. In the prison cell, his face was cold as he handed me warm cotton blankets and filling dry rations. He said, "You're still too impulsive." The jade gentleman of the Shen family remained handsome even in plain clothes within this prison cell. I lowered my head and smiled casually. "Don't worry, I know my limits. I won't drag you into this. Don't associate with me now. I'm tainted. It would stain your reputation. We were never kindred spirits. Just classmates for 2 years by chance. Perhaps it's better we go our separate ways now, lest we grow to resent each other later. Let this dream end here." After 2 years together, I knew him well. He should have understood that these words marked my emotional distance from him. Sure enough, his expression changed. We ended up in a fierce argument where I unleashed all my sarcastic remarks and presented the letter of severance I'd prepared after days of contemplation. His face flushed crimson with anger as he stormed off in a huff. After he left, I was inexplicably filled with a sense of melancholy. From then on, we truly became strangers on separate paths. With calm detachment, I drank the secret potion delivered by my employer and feigned death to make my escape. There's still more to fight over later. What happens next isn't something a nobody like me can get involved in. On the day I was dug out, my former employer came to see me off. She lifted the carriage curtain, clearly wanting me to stay. She told me about her plans for the future, to kill her husband, raise the young heir, and rule the court. There seemed to be a light in her eyes. In that moment, I suddenly understood why the old master had hired me. Resentment. She, like me, was filled with resentment, both of us unwilling to let our lives be controlled by others. I refused and demanded what I had originally wanted, a new identity and travel documents. Shall we keep fighting like this? That would be utterly exhausting. And when we attend court later, facing our classmates and teachers, how am I supposed to explain this face of mine? Looking back now, I really want to go back and slap myself a few times to wake up properly. So much for your high-minded principles. So much for your pride. And you just gave up such a golden opportunity to rise straight to the top. If you won't endure the struggles of competition, you'll have to swallow the bitterness of life's hardships. Might as well keep slaving away for the old boss. At least there's power and status there. Who knows? This might be the merit of supporting the future emperor, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Either change your fate, or be reborn. At least it's better than suffering for 5 years only to be discarded like a worn-out donkey. Now look where we are. After chewing wild vegetables for 5 years, we're being pressured by those in power again. Alright, I've learned my lesson. Please, master, give me another chance. Tilda. The past fades into the distance as the present draws near. The general's eyes darted everywhere, looking at the sky, the ground, the scenery, anywhere but at me. Clearly guilty. Ahem, Aji, this is Miss Yoon. She's here to deliver military supplies, and it's my duty to ensure her safety, isn't it? I stared at the wall, the ground, the crowd, anywhere but at them. To be honest, I'm feeling a little awkward right now, mostly afraid that if I look at him a few more times, he'll notice me staring. After all, we parted on very bad terms back then. I can hardly imagine what he'd do if he found out I faked my death to escape. He probably won't find out. This is my humble wife. The general's gaze lingered on the chipped bowl in my hand and my dust-covered clothes before he averted his eyes. Oh ho, Tilda, when you need help, you call me Aji, but when you think I'm not presentable, it's just 2 words now. I casually exchanged a few words before the general took Miss Yoon for a stroll around the city. I then turned to direct the group of onlookers nearby to get back to work. What was I afraid of? He'd never guess who I really was. Only the guilty feel nervous. I couldn't afford to show any weakness. What's going on here? I jumped in fright. Why are you still here? Shin Cheonglin remained as composed as ever, seeming to notice my alarm. He said, my apologies. This official was presumptuous. No harm done, no harm done. I waved my hand dismissively. We're repairing the city walls. With battles breaking out every other day, we can't afford to have the walls damaged. Shin Cheonglin was a local official sent down from above. And it truly seemed like he was just here to observe the people's conditions, so I didn't interfere further and went back to helping repair the city walls. Well, I'll be damned, after hauling mud for several years, I've actually become much more robust. If I were to fight Shin Cheonglin now, I would definitely win. With his literary talent, he was bound to enter the Hanlin Academy after the imperial exams. After years of compiling books, his physical strength surely isn't what it used to be, so I'm certain I can beat him. With that thought, my mood instantly improved. Even as I dragged my exhausted body home, it all felt insignificant. Sir, this general's wife is indeed from the capital. She came to the border 5 years ago, and moreover, this general's wife is named Shiji Bushio. It seemed like it had been a long time since he last recalled this name. The last time was a month ago when he read a letter with the words "not afraid" written on it. At first glance, he mistook them for Bushio. The timing matches up with that incident from back then, and the name seems to fit too. Shin Cheonglin fell into thought, watching the figure in the distance who looked about to bounce with excitement. Could she be his sister? Their personalities seem worlds apart. Investigate further. I'm unhappy again, dragging my exhausted body home only to face a nagging man who could possibly be happy about that. I want to take Miss Yoon as my second wife. The general watched me cautiously. My good mood vanished instantly. You see, the war here will soon be over, and we'll surely return to the capital. Someone will need to socialize with those noble women. Aji, with your humble background, how could you possibly understand all those intricacies? Ayun excels at such matters, so you needn't trouble yourself. My brows knitted tightly together. Is this how he sees me, lowborn and uncouth? I couldn't help but dwell on it. If I truly followed his suggestion and relinquished all responsibilities, handed over future social engagements to others, would I still remain the general's wife? At that time, others would be the knife and chopping board, while I'd be the fish and meat utterly at their mercy, surviving only by begging for their pity. What could I possibly hope for? His meager affection, or perhaps that Miss Yoon's kindness? I refused to gamble. The inexperienced me of the past refused to gamble. And the present me even more so. I studied him carefully, his expression growing increasingly impatient as he relentlessly listed all my faults over the years, as if determined to trample me into the mud. What about all my hard work these years? Does he choose not to remember? A chill gradually crept into my heart. Fine, look at what you've done. I said it's fine. The general was overjoyed and instantly changed his demeanor, saying tenderly, I knew Aji was always the most understanding. You and I shall divorce. He frowned again. Aji, don't be willful. Even if I marry Ayun, you'll still be the principal wife. Besides, I haven't taken any concubines all these years. Aren't you satisfied yet? I didn't even want to respond to him. Not taking concubines, was it really because he didn't want to? That's because there's no money. Proper families don't have the concept of a second wife. Why don't we divorce instead? I'll make way for that, Miss Yoon. Enough. You should know when to stop throwing tantrums. If we divorce, where would you even go? The general's face turned cold. Think it over carefully. With that, he flicked his sleeve and left. Think it over carefully, Tilda. I mimicked sarcastically. When I make it big, I'll be just as impressive. I worked through the night tallying up the household accounts. After a quick calculation, I felt even worse. Back when we went to the government office to register our residency, we were dirt poor. I only had 2 sets of clothes and a few taels of silver, while he had nothing at all. If we were to divorce, according to the law, I could only take a few taels of silver with me. If the general were to be more ruthless, I'd have to voluntarily leave the household, then I'd depart utterly destitute. I stayed up all night forging a fake ledger. I don't ask for much, just half the silver recorded in it. Every bit of this was saved stitch by stitch through my own hard work. The next day as I was leaving, the old gatekeeper at the manor stopped me. The general hasn't returned all night. I comforted the old man with a few words to ease his mind. At the same time, I removed the rose-tinted glasses from the person who'd accompanied me for years and lowered my opinion of them. TSK. Why doesn't this person just drop dead? That would spare me the trouble of requesting a divorce myself and avoid tarnishing my reputation for nothing. After a night of contemplation, I still think requesting a divorce is the better option after all. He's an official now. Officials protect their own. How could a weak woman like me possibly contend with that? Woo-woo Tilda, I'm so pathetic. I am 25 years old this year. I have been married to the general for 5 years and have not borne any children. Today, I come to request a divorce. The general has now achieved fame. But I, your concubine, have not progressed as I was in the past, tossing and turning. Restless day and night, I fear. Shin Cheonglin raised his eyes, momentarily dazed. The usually unrestrained and flamboyant youth seemed to have reverted to the cold indifference of their first meeting, raising all his defenses against him, though the corners of his eyes were faintly red. That time they parted on bad terms. Later, he sent a letter, speaking of the depth of their friendship, lamenting their diverging paths, and with that missive, severed their ties. Back then, he too was young and proud, unable to swallow his pride to seek reconciliation, and left in anger. Later, he never saw him again, nor did he get to see him one last time. May the heavens be high and the earth vast hereafter, that we never meet again. Let us part with mutual consent henceforth. Each finding our own happiness. Looking at the person below the hall, it seemed as if he saw that man again, someone who regarded himself as insignificant, yet was filled with extreme arrogance. Such contradictory mindsets, yet they somehow justified themselves. It wasn't about being unworthy, but about being incompatible, yet unwilling to compromise oneself, even less willing to let past affection end in nothing but disgust, leaving a sliver of room for both sides. So that beauty could forever remain at its most beautiful moment, innocent, yet cruel. I felt a chill run down my spine under Shin Cheonglin's gaze. What I said was perfectly reasonable. This petition letter should be flawless, right? Shin Cheonglin felt an indescribable emotion. He was almost certain this general's wife was his friend's family member. Their temperaments were truly cut from the same cloth. Shin Cheonglin found it troublesome. Yet there was also an unexpected sense of familiarity and nostalgia. Well then, he might as well intervene in another family's affairs for once. He also wanted to see if similar circumstances might lead to different outcomes. If this lady truly had grievances, he could lend a hand. Consider it as looking after the kin of an old friend. Shin Cheonglin set aside the documents in his hand. This matter still requires discussion with the general. Are there any elder relatives in your household who could be invited as well? You rascal, I knew you were a decent fellow after all. My eyes lit up. This was something I hadn't considered carefully enough. It wasn't until arriving here that I remembered, whether it's divorce, mutual separation, or voluntarily leaving the marriage, all require the husband's consent. But since we're already here, might as well give it a try. Who knows, it might just work out, at the very least. We could find the general, right? Good lad, I knew I wasn't wrong about you. The general came in a rage, and he brought Miss Yoon with him. Shiji, you're truly beyond redemption. Forgive the general, he never had much schooling growing up, relying entirely on those few pretentious words I taught him on a whim a couple years back. I suppose he meant to say making a scene. I've already told you, you'll still be my wife. Why must you make such a fuss and deliberately humiliate me? Jealous woman, the general cursed angrily several times. The Miss Yoon beside him seemed somewhat incredulous, her disbelief mingled with a hint of secret delight. I rolled my eyes and said gloomily, indeed, I am jealous by nature, hence my request to leave. Since you're so furious, just grant it. The general was momentarily at a loss for words. A day as husband and wife brings 100 days of affection. There must still be some sentiment between us, then just give more silver. I rolled my eyes again. Ultimately, it's about wanting both, being insatiably greedy, wanting Miss Yoon who better suits his fancy, yet unable to let go of our years of shared affection, thinking of copying worldly ways, taking multiple wives and playing the generous benefactor, then demanding my magnanimity. Yet what I've never sought was his love or the so-called status of a proper wife, if it's love I wanted. Which down-and-out scholar or poor student wouldn't do better than you, offering silver, pledging devotion, with so many failed scholars around? I refuse to believe none would take the bait. They'd act out deep affection for you and even compose a couple of doggerel verses, to secure the position of a proper wife. Even marrying a peddler, laborer, or craftsman wouldn't be out of the question. Among these men, which one could afford a concubine? Surely any of them would offer a better life than being sent to the borderlands, where one's head hangs by a thread. The general still wanted to speak, but Miss Yoon pulled him aside and whispered a few words in his ear. Though visibly still angry, the general relented and granted me the divorce, eagerly. I borrowed paper and ink from Shen Chonglin to draft another divorce agreement. I got half the silver from the fake accounts again. Miss Yoon advised me to leave. Good for Miss Yoon. Shen the fool borrowed paper. Greetings, Lord Shen. The general divorced. Bad for the general. May he reincarnate soon. My brush moves with divine inspiration, flying across the paper in no time at all. 2 copies of the divorce agreement are completed. The general angrily snatches the divorce papers and says, let's see where you can go without me. With this troublesome matter settled, I don't mind giving him a smile. No need for the general to concern himself. No sooner had I stepped over the threshold of the government office than Shen Chonglin's attendant called me back, leading me once again before Shen Chonglin. Given the general's high status, it was already time for lunch break. The office was closed for noon rest. Is there anything else? My heart sank. This couldn't be happening. You look strikingly familiar, madam. I had an old friend named Shibushio. I clenched my hands secretly. How could this be? Might I ask if you are a sister from this old friend's family? Huff. The tension in my heart lifted and settled back down, a false alarm, and it even helped cement my cover identity. My elder brother's name is indeed this. I lowered my head to look at the ground. Shen Chonglin tightened his grip on the pen in his hand. His family no longer wished to mention him either. Indeed, the one who should have sheltered her from life's storms had instead become the root of her lifelong turmoil. How could his family not resent him? Abandoned by all. Shen Chonglin felt a stifling anger lodged in his chest, neither rising nor subsiding, leaving him utterly vexed. He never did those things. He was framed. The case has been reopened. Now that the past was gone with the departed, it seemed this was the only chance he had to clear his name. I know, my elder brother would never do such things. A storm rages in my mind. The lie I told was about having a younger sister at home. Right, a sister, right. Stupid brain. Think harder. If I'd known this would happen, I should have said I had 8 older sisters and 7 younger sisters. Forget it, never mind, let's just say they're twins. No need to distinguish who came first. Call me elder sister when there's trouble, and younger sister when things are fine. After he died, I relented and let him be the older brother. Yes, that's what we'll say. Shen Chonglin began, then thought better of it and changed his words. Madam Shi, what are your plans from now on? I hesitated. Now that I no longer held the status of the general's wife, I couldn't interfere with affairs here anymore. With you, Shen Yulang, by my side, I can rest assured. Why not find a pleasant place, with money to rely on? Where couldn't I go? Oh, right. To leave I'd need travel documents, what a hassle. I slumped in despair and said mournfully, I don't even know where to go. My parents died early, and I used to rely on my elder brother, just following wherever he went. It's been years since he passed, and I haven't even visited his grave once. I'd like to go back and keep him company. But, quick, Lord Shen, quickly say you'll give me the travel pass. Let me go back to mourn my elder brother. I stole a glance at Shen Qianglin from the corner of my eye, secretly hopeful. Shen Qianglin looked despondent as he said, if Lady She hasn't made up her mind yet, why not stay and help at the government office for now? We're short-handed at the moment, and I see that Lady She is literate. Would you consider staying temporarily as a female official? Didn't I say it already? I want to pay respects to Big Brother. Damn you. Shen the blockhead, you only listen to half of what people say. Please allow this humble woman some more time to think. What about my dignity? Although being talked about won't make me lose an ounce of flesh, hearing those words still hurts my heart. Wait, did that fool Shen just mention female officials? Female officials? With a whoosh, it felt like something exploded inside my head. The borderlands were remote, and news traveled slowly. I hadn't heard any updates from the capital in years, yet these two words seemed to instantly blast open all my memories from those years in the capital. Which young lad has caught Miss She's fancy? That she'd even kicked the general to the curb. It was the lady delivering meals, teasing me. I still needed to finish the matter with the city wall first, then came over here. Everyone knows already. That fast. I froze for a moment, feeling somewhat embarrassed after all. It wasn't exactly an honorable matter. Isn't she just a discarded woman abandoned by the general? A soldier helping on the scene sneered. I frowned. This was exactly the kind of gossip I hated. If you don't clarify, people say you're admitting it, and it eats at you. If you do clarify, they say you're making a mountain out of a molehill, and it still eats at you. Damn it, I hate these rumor mongers the most, except for me and my people, of course. Perfect timing. Shen the fool is cracking down on military discipline. You'd better make sure your record is as clean as your wallet. I made a mental note of where this soldier was from. Just wait. We'll strip you down to your underwear. Dig 3 feet into the ground to investigate. I had just gathered my thoughts when the meal delivery woman started cursing. No, wait, expounding would be more accurate. Using marital separation as the focal point and factual rights-wrongs as the radius, she delivered a comprehensive, gap-free exposition on whether the public should verbally abuse divorced women after a couple's separation. The theme was elevated in passing. Divorce by mutual consent means both parties have reached an agreement. So don't be too harsh on divorced women. A clever reference was made to the saying, to err is human, emphasizing that both men and women have the right to freely choose. A bit of personal bias was slipped in, using widows from the Qin and Han dynasties as examples. It was explained that becoming a widow was because the husband's family couldn't hold on to their good fortune. I silently gave a thumbs up, praising Madam Cai in my heart. With things like this, what else do I have to fear? Official position tilde this humble one. No, your servant has arrived tilde. The meal-delivering Lady Cai scolded that man away. I asked curiously, did Lady Cai study in the past? Lady Cai smiled and replied, I know a few characters. Originally just for household management, never thought. Well, never mind that now, no problem. As long as it works, we need people who get things done. It's decided, you'll be the first colleague I recommend. I rushed back to the office like the wind to find Shen Qianglin. This official position, I'm not just going to take it, I'm going to own it. With Shen Qianglin present, the procedures were quickly completed, and I officially became a female clerk in service. Why not an official position? No merits yet. Slightly unqualified for now, but there will be soon. When winter comes and the barbarians march south, I must find a way to earn some merit. Before that, I should send a letter to my long-unseen former master, offer sincere greetings and concern, then explain how I've been cut off from news all these years, unaware of so many things, and only recently heard of such major changes, briefly summarize what I've done over the years and which skills I've improved, praise the employer's abilities a bit more, drop a few flattering remarks both overtly and covertly, and especially congratulate her on getting promoted, making a fortune, and becoming a widow. Finally, show what you aspire to do, hoping they'd be willing to lend a hand, and declare that you'll be their loyal follower for life. Give me a chance. This kid is dying to succeed, with connections in high places. Half the effort yields double the results. Shen Qianglin happened to see this letter and couldn't resist asking about it. I presented the prepared explanation. It's a letter to an elder who showed me great kindness in the past. She helped me tremendously during those refugee years. Now that life has stabilized, it's only right to send greetings, though I wonder if, after all this time, she might still receive it. Fortunately, my worries proved unfounded, and a reply soon arrived. The master was surprised to receive my letter but still welcomed it. I was overjoyed. All those years weren't in vain. Studying at the Imperial College by day, managing the shop by night, and occasionally keeping her company to vent her frustrations about her husband, Lady Cai asked curiously. Whose letter has made you so happy? Indeed, I brought Lady Cai along, first keeping her by my side as an assistant to learn the ropes, planning to promote her once she's ready, though in Shen Qianglin's eyes, I'm probably just a half-baked rookie. TSK. Damn that blockheaded Shen, couldn't he have hired more people to share the workload? The days that followed were spent rekindling ties with my former employer, gradually getting the hang of official duties, and waiting for the barbarians to exhaust their supplies. TSK. Reuniting with my old boss was like a honeymoon after separation, utterly inseparable. Today, just as I sent out this letter, I received a reply to the previous one. Moreover, the content of the letter was noticeably more familiar compared to the polite greetings of the first one. Occasionally, the old master even mentioned the new hires she had taken on over the years and the troubles they brought. I treasured it like a rare gem, jotting it all down, every single detail. These are all future colleagues I'll be working with. I believe that as long as my flattery is loud enough, I'll always remain the apple of my master's eye. I'll allow that my master's heart is a spiked club, exchanging passionate letters with my master. My days at the official residence were quite delightful, so much so that when the general came knocking, it felt like another lifetime had passed. Sister Shiji, is this how it's done? No one used to be willing to come to this government office before, and even if they did, they'd usually shirk responsibilities. The old foxes in the office had all been cleared out by Shen Qianglin, leaving only some clean-slated young men newly promoted by him. We're all starting from the same line. But since I had my elder brother's guidance, I picked things up relatively quickly. When they come asking questions, if they're sweet-tongued enough, I'm happy to teach them. So when the general came looking for me, what he likely saw were 4 or 5 radiant young men with jade-like complexions gathered around me. Laughing cheerfully, I accepted a cup of milk tea handed to me by one of them while pointing at the book held by another. Meanwhile, Lady Cai was toiling away at her paperwork nearby, occasionally casting resentful glances in my direction. Far from it, the general let out a furious roar. Me, you're not being a proper woman. Me, question, how do you deal with having to interact with an idiot when you really don't want to talk to them? Best strategy. Eliminate him, ensuring he never has the chance to appear before you again, thus naturally ending any interaction. Middle strategy. Speak kindly and maintain superficial relations while biding your time to distance yourself from him. Worst strategy. Lash out at him. It achieves little but provides momentary satisfaction, followed by endless trouble until you either eliminate him or walk away. The above strategies are derived from personal experience. Of course, there are exceptions. For instance, suddenly realizing the target isn't so bad while plotting to eliminate them. After all, there's precedent for this. I'm in quite a dilemma. The optimal strategy isn't feasible for now. I still need him to climb the social ladder. The middle road disgusts me temporarily. While the worst option is both revolting and troublesome, I was just in a dilemma when a precedent arrived. Shen Qianglin. The general has matters to discuss inside. Why trouble Lady Shi out here? Exactly. Why trouble a delicate and helpless young woman like me? Shen Qianglin took the general away to discuss matters. After this encounter with the general, the young lads returned to their posts and stopped coming to question me. Fine, I might as well enjoy this leisure. When the general left, he kept staring at me, standing as still as a stone statue of a waiting wife, speechless. I thought to myself, if I can't handle this, at least I can avoid it. Such peaceful days are numbered, why waste them? Soon, the war began. This year, our troops are strong and well equipped, with ample provisions, though exhausting. Our hearts are at ease, strategizing within the command tent, deciding victory 1,000 miles away. Such is the scholar's delight. Brewing tea with melted snow, all these, not a single one missed, are now within our grasp. Could life's joy be any greater? Though what I brewed wasn't particularly tasty, and it was freezing cold to boot. By the way, I got promoted. Things are a bit complicated here at the border. Anyway, among the civil officials at the frontier, Shen Qianglin ranks first. And I can make it into the top 5, gotta save some face for those old-timers who've been around for decades. The border conflict was pretty much a foregone conclusion. The other side surrendered quickly and sent over some document or other, basically their surrender. The gatekeeper, my lord. The general has sent gifts again. Me, keep the gifts. Tell him to get lost. Lady Cai, now officially holding a position in the government office, asked, "What? The general still hasn't given up?" Shivering, I rubbed my hands together. Who knows what's going through his mind, after all these years together? Don't you have any thoughts about him? Since Sister Cai's husband died saving her, she naturally views every marital relationship through rose-colored glasses. I held my tongue. Well, maybe a little. Oh, Sister Cai's eyes instantly lit up. I said expressionlessly, "Can all the things I did for him in previous years also be written down?" Madame Cai also became expressionless. Shen Qianglin demanded that we write down everything we had done this year by year-end, regardless of the outcome. For the last 2 months, we've basically been shuttling non-stop between several border cities and towns. There were too many tasks, and my mind forgot them quickly. Aunt Cai was worried about whether she had written everything correctly, while I was worried that there wasn't enough material to write about. It's simply not enough, the master wrote to me, instructing me to write this year-end report properly. With this great victory and the barbarians suing for peace, there are bound to be rewards and honors. She told me to write it well, to make sure all the formalities were properly observed, and then send someone to pull me out when the time comes. To forge iron, one must be strong oneself. Connections alone won't suffice without real achievements. The question arises, with Shen Qianglin overseeing the overall situation, though somewhat risky, I managed to avoid trouble. Moreover, warfare has always been the domain of military officers. Civil officials can hardly make a difference unless the enemy is at the city gates. And besides, I'm just a minor functionary. The thing I do most every day is calculate losses, remaining provisions, casualties, then adjust troops, supplies, remaining strands of hair, even posting public notices. The kind of work that boosts reputation by showing your face to the people isn't assigned to me. What can I possibly use to convince the boss to promote me? It's truly a midlife career crisis. Forget it. Might as well freeze to death in this job for the rest of my life. Late at night under the lamplight, I went ahead and wrote about this matter to my employer. I tactfully hinted that it wasn't for lack of effort these years, I'd simply forgotten to grow some cunning. And all the achievements from my work ended up going to others. The lamplight flickered. There aren't many matters to attend to on this side of the border. Shen Qianglin was also preparing the year-end report to be submitted. As the highest-ranking local official, he had an additional task, summarizing and verifying the merits of everyone in the government office, so that rewards could be distributed when the time came. This battle had ended much faster than he had anticipated. Shen Qianglin picked up another report, this one written in an exaggerated narrative style. It was clearly penned by a ghostwriter for some military officer, most likely someone who'd previously made a living writing storybooks. The writer had poured all their literary skill into depicting the officer's battlefield heroics, crafting a tale with meticulous structure and dramatic twists. Well then, utterly useless, Shen Qianglin once again saw a name inside. As expected, Shi Buxiu's younger sister, as stubborn and unwilling to suffer the slightest grievance as he was, managed affairs flawlessly in the relatively safe place he had arranged. She captured all the ambushes and even sent provisions over a dozen times to several cities ahead. Once more, Shen Qianglin noted Shiji's contributions in others' reports. It seems Shiji's temperament would be much easier to get along with. If he had the same stubborn disposition as Shi Buxiu, he'd be in for real trouble. Shen Qianglin then flipped open the next ledger, formatted like routine accounting records. November 5th, grain transportation. November 9th, audited Cheung County's official accounts, up to this year, estimated total embezzlement and bribery. I also dug up some old rotten accounts from a few places. Adding another entry to Shen Qianglin's tally, Shen Qianglin's frown deepened as he read further, not just because of the staggering sums and vast network involved, but also due to the speculated methods detailed in the report. Like that fellow Shi Buxiu, Shiji might not know how to gather evidence, but he was accustomed to unraveling part of the problem through his own observations. Meticulous as a strand of hair, bold in speculation, he was often 80 to 90% close to the truth. Just lacking concrete proof, Shen Qianglin grew increasingly alarmed as he read, only letting out a slight sigh of relief when he reached the end. Thankfully, Shiji wasn't as reckless as Shi Buxiu, he merely reminded him to investigate the matter thoroughly. Shen Qianglin turned to the next book. This one has the style of a travelogue, with quite a bit of rustic charm and pastoral delight. Shen Qianglin, sporting a pair of heavy dark circles under his eyes, commented with keen interest. The imperial court's rewards arrived at the frontier just before the New Year festivities. Shen Qianglin led a group of officials and military officers to greet them at the city gate. The general deliberately or unintentionally moved closer. I quietly stepped back. If you have something to say, just say it. Dilly-dallying like this, what kind of behavior is that? How about we remarry when the court grants you a promotion? That would be double happiness. Me. Average looks, extraordinary imagination. Who knows where he got this confidence? Always thinking I'm just giving him the silent treatment out of spite. Why spoil a perfectly good celebration with bad luck? Stop making a scene. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. Is that the only line you know? Our commotion had grown rather loud, drawing Shen Qianglin's attention. We'll discuss this later. The envoy's procession could already be seen. General, please step aside. This row is for civil officials, your place is over there. Several colleagues also came forward, some pushing and others pulling. As the envoy arrived, everyone dropped to their knees in unison. The worst part about receiving imperial rewards is this: these icy stone tiles make one's knees ache terribly. Announcing imperial decrees is a job that demands exceptional vocal prowess. In such a vast space, with so many people present, every single word was somehow heard with perfect clarity. Yet from the initial ceremonial formalities, to Shen Qianglin's appointment and transfer orders, down to rewards for all relevant personnel ranging from Shen Qianglin's 4th rank position to the lowest 9th rank soldiers, every name was announced here except mine. No rewards for female officials. But that can't be right. Lady Cai and Miss Yun, who funded military supplies, both received rewards. Until the very end, I never heard my name called. Minister Shen received the imperial decree. The angel smiled at Shen Qianglin. Yes, the emperor's envoy, abbreviated as Angel. Shen Qianglin neither rose nor received the decree. There is still one person whose merits remain unrewarded. May I ask the angel? Don't be hasty, Lord Shen. The angel cheerfully shoved the imperial edict into Shen Qianglin's hands, then pulled out another scroll. Where is Shiji? Step forward to receive the decree. Her, my former employer, such extravagance. Just for me, a single imperial edict. I scurried forward and caught an accidental glimpse. Oh, an old acquaintance, a lengthy 100-word proclamation, boiled down to essentials. This person is quite excellent, has rendered meritorious service. I greatly admire them. Pack your things and come serve by my side. I joyfully accepted the imperial decree. The heavenly envoy helped me up, smiling. After all these years away, do you still acknowledge me as your foster father? Indeed. This man was my direct superior when I worked for the old master, and by the way, I had acknowledged him as my foster father. Foster father has shown me boundless kindness. How could I dare not acknowledge you? Back when I ran away from home, it was my adoptive father who saved me, when I faked my death to escape. It was also my adoptive father who took me in. At the welcome banquet afterward, I basked in his reflected glory for an entire evening of flattery. Who says power isn't wonderful? The general sat in the corner, growing increasingly uncomfortable with what he heard. If he hadn't been so arrogant, would he still be her husband now? Miss Yun fidgeted restlessly. She had finally managed to attach herself to a general, only for him to make an enemy of nobility. She was caught between a rock and a hard place. Miss Yun clenched her teeth and made up her mind. The night was filled with clinking cups and laughter, with lanterns burning until the 3rd watch. After the night's banquet, Shen Qianglin, supporting his slightly dizzy head, called for his attendants. Today, Shiji received an imperial decree for 3 merits. First, 4 years of service at the frontier. Second, for achievements in this battle. And third, for his contributions in investigating the corruption case 5 years ago. Shen Qianglin recalled that 5 years ago, apart from the criminal charges he had submitted, there were indeed other pieces of evidence. But if there was merit, why wasn't it rewarded back then, only to be acknowledged 5 years later? And it was a search operation. If Lady Shi had still been unmarried at that time, how could she have participated in an external search? If Lady Shi was already the Empress Dowager's person back then, why wasn't she rewarded but instead sent far away to the border? Also, did he know that Lady Shi was working for the Empress Dowager? There are many suspicious points about this matter. Shen Qianglin closed his eyes. Did you know, Shen Qianglin and Shi Buxiu's first meeting could be considered the start of a feud? During their first encounter, Shi Buxiu shattered the clivia plant Shen Qianglin had been cultivating. Shen Qianglin didn't consider himself an unreasonable person, an apology would have settled the matter. Yet this fool didn't know what was good for him. It was clearly him and his gang of good-for-nothing friends who were fooling around and broke the orchid he had nurtured. He merely gave him a glare, and this wretch deliberately rode his horse to kick the wooden fence onto his path during the equestrian exam, causing him to end up at the bottom of the rankings. And when they were both punished with copying assignments, the guy even came over with a smirk to provoke him. Shen Qianglin wasn't the type to swallow his grievances in silence. He quietly paid him back in kind. He completely tore apart that guy's essay in the next exam, deeming it worthless, and took first place. Previous exam papers were always singled out by the teacher for discussion in class. His essay in particular, Shi Buxiu was so naive it bordered on stupidity. Refuting his essay was practically effortless. But at that time, Shen Qianglin somewhat wanted to see the world as depicted by Shi Buxiu. Still, Shi Buxiu remained a detestable person. Shen Qianglin held the article Shi Buxiu had newly written to refute him, reading it word by word, searching for flaws to prepare for his next rebuttal. 3 characters were wrong. The next day, Shen Qianglin handed the manuscript to the teacher, mentioning it casually in passing. After one class, Shi Buxiu retrieved his manuscript, rewarded with 3 extra copies of assigned reading to transcribe. Shi Buxiu returned to his seat, utterly bewildered. Is the teacher really that strict? The two engaged in a lively exchange. Today you'd present a timely essay, first dismantling my argument before establishing your own. Tomorrow I'd compose a lengthy prose, mocking your folly while defending before attacking. The master stroked his beard, departing with evident satisfaction. This back and forth gradually refined their respective viewpoints. With granaries full, the world would prosper, with the masses enlightened. Common folk could recite poetry and literature. Good, of course it was excellent, yet that was impossible, for beneath that beautiful facade lay the demand for the privilege to relinquish their own interests, creating only a superficial fairness for all. At least in the current world, it's absolutely impossible. Not to mention books, even the grain grown in the fields by common folk is under extremely tight control. It was a woman, holding a blood-written plea, with a straw mat beside her, crying out for justice before the government office. At that time, an old scholar from the Imperial College was taking his students on a study tour. This venerable teacher's lectures were so engaging that when inspiration struck, he would lead his students on impromptu excursions. This time, they were taken to the counties surrounding the capital to learn firsthand how official business was conducted. Just at that moment, someone cried out for justice. It was like a knife, tearing apart all the delusions of youths who had yet to taste the bitterness of the world. The one crying for justice was a commoner, but the one dragged out was a member of the imperial family, oppressing the people to death, forcibly seizing their land. Shen Qianglin examined the blood-written letter. Although the writer had tried to control it, some habits were impossible to change. It was written by Shi Buxiu. Shen Qianglin silently sought out Shi Buxiu, unexpectedly. Shi Buxiu's residence was surprisingly shabby. Shi Buxiu didn't look pleased to see him arrive. Shen Qianglin simply placed the blood-stained white cloth on the table. What you've done isn't very clear. Shi Buxiu remained expressionless. So what? Do you know who's behind this? Shi Buxiu still looked indifferent. People who treat human life as worthless grass and are insatiably greedy. Seeing his ungrateful attitude, Shen Qianglin couldn't help but let irritation seep into his tone. If anything happens, you'll bear the consequences yourself. Don't drag the Imperial Academy into this. Shi Buxiu casually curled his lips and tossed the white cloth into the brazier. Don't worry, I know my limits. I won't involve innocent people. Shen Qianglin's impression of Shi Buxiu changed once again. It wasn't naivety, but rather an almost obsessive pursuit of justice after witnessing countless injustices. For this, he would stop at nothing. Several months later, the two shook hands and made peace. Shen Qianglin brought up the matter again. Shi Buxiu's explanation was, she had nothing left and was already seeking death. Might as well gamble once to ease her heart a little. Shen Qianglin disagreed. There were more thorough methods to accomplish this. Shi Buxiu smiled and said no more. The two reconciled as naturally as water flows in a channel. It only took one collaboration, speaking openly, and a few kind words to consider each other friends. For the next half year, even if they occasionally quarreled, they were mostly inseparable. As for how often this occasionally was, it doesn't matter. After school, Shen Qianglin watched the people around him with deliberate casualness. As expected, they had argued again during class over their differing opinions. The volume was just a tad louder by 100 million points, and the words were just a tad more intense by 100 million points. Shen Qianglin intentionally matched Shi Bushuo's pace. Walking together naturally before casually asking where they should go to eat, Shi Bushuo paused for a moment. Shen Qianglin's heart tightened slightly. It's been a while since we last ate at that riverside fish restaurant by the lake. Shall we go? Shen Qianglin smiled and agreed. Yes. A gentle breeze and warm sun, what a beautiful day. With the day's work done, we boated on the lake. Fish simmered in the pot as a soft breeze brushed our faces, and the sunset's glow rippled in the water around us. It's truly delightful. Shi Bushuo lay down on the deck and asked, "Where does Jade Lang wish to go in the future?" Shen Qianglin naturally understood he was inquiring about official appointments. He replied, "If nothing unexpected happens, it should be compiling books at the Hanlin Academy." Shi Bushuo wasn't surprised. Although the exam results hadn't been announced yet, with Shen Qianglin's scholarly achievements, passing was practically a foregone conclusion. And becoming a Hanlin Academy probationary scholar wouldn't be too difficult either. Shen Qianglin also asked, "What about you? You should still focus more on your studies, unless you want to wait another 3 years." Shi Bushuo excelled in unconventional thinking and had a knack for innovation. But if the exam topic didn't align with his ideas and required him to write a conventional essay, that would truly be challenging for him. Shi Bushuo waved his hand nonchalantly. "We'll see when the time comes." When the time comes? Shen Qianglin never imagined that "we'll see when the time comes" would mean meeting him in prison, on the day of the imperial examination, with the crowds coming and going. Shen Qianglin didn't see Shi Bushuo and thought nothing of it. But on the day of leaving the examination hall, he learned that Shi Bushuo had never taken the exam, arrested and imprisoned for stealing the test questions. Shen Qianglin was incredulous. He would never do such a thing. Shen Qianglin changed into a jailer's uniform, pulled some strings, and went to the prison to see him once. Seeing him still in good spirits, Shen Qianglin relaxed slightly and finally had the mood to ask what had happened. Shi Bushuo, now in prison, had shed his usual nonchalance. "Do you still remember that small path we found during our temple visit?" As the imperial examinations approached, temples and similar places often provided temporary lodging for scholars, making them popular venues for literary gatherings. Back then, Shi Bushuo had grown thoroughly weary of such gatherings and dragged Shen Qianglin down a secluded path, at the end of which stood a newly built house. That was the place where the examiners leaked the questions. Shen Qianglin, now aware of the whole story, was inwardly shocked but couldn't help complaining. "So you just went alone to that man's residence and ransacked his study? You're still too impulsive. Couldn't you have discussed it with him first?" Shi Bushuo was probably also in a bad mood, his gentle words laced with barbs, each one piercing his heart like a blade. "Don't worry, I know my limits. I won't drag you into this." Sometimes Shen Qianglin truly wished he and Shi Bushuo hadn't become so close. To the point where he could see every hidden barb with perfect clarity. Was he pushing him away because he didn't trust him, or because he thought he was cut from the same cloth? It must be said that Shen Qianglin's tutoring for Shi Bushuo wasn't in vain. A speech as elaborate as a lengthy rhapsody flowed effortlessly from his lips. Shen Qianglin's mood soured as well, tossing the items toward him dismissively. As for the piece Shi Bushuo had torn from his sleeve and written in blood, he didn't even glance at it. "Let's hope so," Shen Qianglin said coldly. The next day, news spread of Shi Bushuo's death. He had hanged himself, using the very bedding that had been sent to him. Shen Qianglin sat motionless in his study, staring blankly at the transcript of Shi Bushuo's confession that someone had copied for him. Only through death can innocence be proven. It was as if Shen Qianglin suddenly understood. Everyone has their own way of doing things, for those without power or influence. The only stake they can wager is their own life. To take a gamble, to plan before acting has always been Shen Qianglin's principle in handling matters. He used to say that his actions were reckless and lacked flexibility, but this time, he could no longer afford to scheme. All he wanted was to make a scene. The bigger, the better. If he couldn't get justice for him, then he'd stir up trouble until someone in power had to intervene. "Even at the cost of my life, I would not hesitate." Running, investigating, uniting scholars, striking the grievance drum, submitting petitions during the palace examination. 22. In the midnight dreams, Shen Qianglin still finds himself thinking, if only he had been gentler then, had trusted him a little more, would he not have hanged himself then? Jade Lord Tilda. In a daze, Shen Qianglin saw a figure. Shi Bushuo looked at him with a smile, his tone teasing. "After just a few years apart, how could you not recognize me?" Shen Qianglin instinctively denied it. After missing him for so many years, how could he possibly not recognize? Suddenly, a thunderclap startled him, as if a bolt of lightning had jolted him awake. Yet his mind remained in a daze, chaotic and disordered, that unchangeable writing habit, that nearly identical face, that strikingly similar. Something seems on the verge of emerging, yet remains perpetually out of reach. How utterly heartbreaking. Tilda, that scoundrel still wore his usual frivolous demeanor, half murmuring, half sighing. Jade Lord, on stage, the opera singer's voice was filled with sorrow, each word dripping with blood and tears. In the audience, I listened with my hair standing on end, wishing I could cover my face with my sleeve. I was returning to the capital with my adoptive father, passing through the bustling regions of Suzhou and Hangzhou, and decided to join the crowd at the opera house for some excitement. The play being performed on stage was a newly written one in recent years. I didn't think much of it at first, but the more I watched, the more something felt off. The title of this play was The Western Lord's Broken Sleeves and Prison Grievance. The Jade youth kneels long in the hall to untangle affections. Me, who is Shijuan, and who is Yulang? The performer's eyes sparkled as he sang. Emperor Hanwu once cherished his minister's devotion, just as we classmates share this bond today. Finishing the song, the performer untied his water sleeves and tossed them toward another man, each holding one end of the sleeves. They gazed at each other with unspoken tenderness, words caught in their throats. Suddenly, the water sleeve tore apart in the middle. I appeared calm and composed, but in truth, my gaze was vacant. Severing robes to end friendship. It's severing robes to end friendship, not the severed sleeve. The term cut sleeve originated from Emperor Wu of Han sharing a bed with his minister. Upon waking, the emperor couldn't bear to disturb his sleeping minister, so he cut off the sleeve of his robe that was trapped beneath the minister. Later, this came to symbolize the sincere affection between men, not literally cutting sleeves though. My adoptive father sipped his tea, glanced at me with a smile, then continued speaking to the local official. Speaking of which, your honor was classmates with those two gentlemen, wasn't you? The official fanned himself, recalling how those two had competed like dragons and tigers in their youth, making all their classmates suffer through writing essays alongside them. The bitter memories of the past now seemed to carry a peculiar flavor of their own. The prefect couldn't help but chuckle. Truth be told, among all the classmates who used to write essays together back then, the prefect was the only one whose writings weren't in vain. Back in those days, it was he who led the crowd to corner Shiji and shattered the orchid plant that Shen Qianglin had so carefully nurtured. Then there was another mishap at the equestrian exam he arranged, causing these two to respectively rank last and second to last. From then on, the two former top scholars of the Imperial College officially became sworn enemies, plunging all its students into a living hell of frantic essay writing. After laughing, the prefect seemed lost in melancholy. I finally found my voice again. Is this something that can be acted out? The magistrate leisurely fanned himself. Wait, her ladyship will soon come out to administer justice. Another figure appeared on the opera stage, dignified yet compassionate in appearance, dealing with the villain who had done wrong. Praising the landlord's benevolence. Oh, never mind then. I continued watching the play. Fortunately, apart from that slightly misleading segment earlier, everything else was relatively normal. The prefect spoke again. You wouldn't know, but this is actually quite restrained compared to how they usually perform. The common folk have even more outrageous versions. I remember watching one where the Jade Lord vowed never to marry for the rest of his life out of devotion to the Western monarch. I nodded, thinking it's nothing more than, The adoptive father chuckled and asked, My lord, doesn't seeing these familiar faces from the operas strike you as odd? The magistrate kept time with his hand. It's precisely because I know someone here that I'm watching this. Otherwise, why would I bother? In a daze, I watched the entire performance, then took my leave from the magistrate with vacant eyes. Standing by the riverbank, the magistrate fanned himself while gazing at the flowing waters. Memories resurfaced, and an inevitable sorrow welled up in his heart. Discussing literature, attending banquets, endless affairs, the subordinate stood with bowed head and lowered eyes, waiting for a long while, yet saw no further movement from the prefect. The prefect gazed into the distance, maintaining this posture for an extended period. Unable to think of what to say next, he ultimately chose to give up. The prefect clapped his hands lightly. Everyone said Lord Shi and Master Yu shared a deep and affectionate bond. From what he could see, Shi Buxiu had nearly become Yu Lang's obsession, driving him to the brink of madness. Instead of enjoying the prestigious and tranquil life of a Hanlin scholar, he had to stir up trouble at the most precarious moment back then. At that time, no one dared to make a move against him. Did no one know Shi Buxiu was wronged? Of course there was. Shibusho was a nobody with no power, influence, or profit to offer. To put it bluntly, he couldn't even get past the gates of the examination office, so how could he possibly have bought the exam papers? Yet he was the only one arrested, and that hot-headed Shen Yulang made such a scene that the Shen family nearly severed ties with him at the time. The man is already dead, what difference does it make to clear his name now? But by then the outcome was ultimately favorable. Nearly all the chief examiners of that metropolitan examination were imprisoned, while he himself gained a fine reputation. As a result, this man voluntarily requested to be transferred to a local post. All these years he had devoted himself wholeheartedly to building political achievements, rushing wherever troubles arose. The prefect pondered this as he strolled forward, but had taken only a few steps when someone rushed up and grabbed him. The prefect, was he seeing things? Doesn't this person look exactly like Shen Yulang? The man's eyes were bloodshot, his appearance travel-worn, clearly someone who had rushed here after an exhausting journey. Where is the angel now? The magistrate pointed into the distance, just left not long ago. The man prepared to give chase again. The magistrate quickly stopped him. Whatever matter you have, you may tell me first. I know where the angel will go next. Shen Qianglin halted his steps. Not official business, but personal matters. Hearing this, the prefect first arranged for a boat to be prepared before inviting Shen Qianglin into a tea house to rest for a while. As coincidence would have it, the person Shen Qianglin had asked to help investigate the matter happened to run into their former classmate from years past. The classmate recalled the past, thinking of Shibusho's pitiful fate, and went to sweep his grave. This act of sweeping led to unexpected trouble. By coincidence, they encountered descendants of the examiners who had been executed years ago. These individuals, having faced obstacles everywhere due to past events and feeling resentful, came to dig up Shibusho's grave. They had only dug halfway when the classmate arrived. Of course we had to stop them when we saw this. Amidst the shoving between several people, the half-dug grave collapsed. Our classmate hurried to check, only to find the coffin had rotted and caved in. Upon closer inspection, well now, the coffin was completely empty. The classmate was shocked and told the investigator in great terror, Shibusho has risen from the dead. Tell Shen Qianglin to protect himself. Shibusho might already be on his way to find him. The investigator, fortunately, Shen Yulang didn't enter the Hanlin Academy. Look at him editing books has addled his brains. But the matter still needs investigating. It's just that there's one more thing to look into now. The investigators traced back to Shibusho's ancestral hometown, and what they uncovered was astonishing. No such person existed. According to previous inquiries among the neighbors, no one had ever seen such a person. Shibusho seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Shibusho's background was that of a destitute orphan from a small county town. His main family branch had long since moved elsewhere, and there was virtually no contact between them, with some natural talent for scholarship. He entered the Imperial Academy with a letter of recommendation. His former classmates mostly knew he was alone in the world, at most aware he had a sister. Upon learning that this sister had long since fled and was living safely, they stopped asking further. Then check that letter of recommendation. That should be easy to verify, as it's from the current Empress Dowager's faction. The Empress Dowager's faction officially rose to prominence in the court precisely during the Imperial examination fraud case. If one still fails to realize something is amiss, they'd truly be a fool. This is a setup, a game laid out early for the Empress Dowager to seize power. What about Shibusho? Is this man real or fake? Shen Qianglin's mind grew increasingly chaotic. Reason told him to stop here. Just like this, if he continued, what he might uncover would be more than he could bear. Yet his heart, uncontrollably, yearned to seek further. Was it to hear news of an old friend, or to learn something else? He didn't know, but he wanted to find out. Perhaps there is someone who could tell him. Arrived at another place. My foster father's health is poor, so I accompanied the local magistrate for a walk around. Wow, what towering mountains. Wow, such emerald green water. As the day trip concluded, I walked back to the post station with deep satisfaction. A lone figure stood waiting by the gate. Approaching, I exclaimed in surprise, "Why is Lord Shen here? The transfer order has a time limit, and he must assume his post when the time comes. Why is that fool Shen still running around everywhere?" Shen Qianglin remained silent, his eyes fixed on me. I scratched my head, puzzled. Stop, or not? His gaze was deep and profound, as if asking me, yet also as if questioning himself, murmuring, "People nowadays choose courtesy names, some select meanings that are similar, while others choose those with opposite meanings. Is this not so?" My heart seemed to skip a beat, and time stretched infinitely in that instant. Unexpectedly, I was calm, without the imagined panic or confusion, but rather with a grounded sense of finality. I heard my own voice. What has Lord Shen discovered? A bit of everything, just bits and pieces. I walked over and sat beside him on the steps, fiddling with the jade beads weighing down my lapel as I propped my chin in my hand and sighed. Then what did you want to ask me about? Shen Qionglin's lips parted and closed repeatedly before he finally managed to speak. Is Shi Buxiu still alive? Indeed, I lowered my gaze. The man still lives, but Shi Buxiu is already dead. Noticing someone approaching, I glanced around, my eyes settling on a fishing boat by the riverbank. Would Lord Shen care to admire the river scenery here with me? Naturally, Shen Qiongling clearly understood my meaning. He rose and rented a small boat. Once seated, Shen Qiongling seemed to come to his senses, his gaze sharp and direct as he looked straight at me. It's you, Shen Qionglin's composure frightened me a little. I'd rather he rushed up to hit me, or at least cursed me out. He just looked at me, his gaze icy. I'd rather you were really dead, worshipping an angel as a godfather, gaining the favor of the Empress Dowager. Each and every one of these incidents confirms his suspicions. How much of that past affection was real or fake? How much of that person from back then was real or fake? Shen Qiongling didn't want to ask further. I pouted. It's you who keeps reminiscing about the departed every day, yet when they actually come back to life, you're unhappy. Shen Qiongling lowered his gaze. Since you've already retired after achieving merit, why come back? Wouldn't it be better to live peacefully? Why wade into these troubled waters again, with no threat from barbarians abroad nor turmoil in the imperial court? And Jade Lang being no pursuer of fame or fortune, why not return to mulberry fields and farming? I did not answer but instead asked in return. This question I asked well knowing the answer. When great chaos has yet to come and minor troubles remain unsettled, with injustice still plaguing the land, how could one retreat to pastoral life? The cabin was silent, the atmosphere stiff. We were old acquaintances, yet years of separation had inevitably created distance. I couldn't tell how much affection still remained between us. I broke the silence first, speaking of local customs and human relationships to suit the occasion. He also responded, it feels like we've returned to those days when we could talk about anything. 6 years apart, we meet again by lamplight on a night boat, speaking not of what came before or after, bidding farewell at this very mountain. The boat docks, our paths diverge. I glance back at his receding figure, then continue onward. The road ahead is still long, but heaven has granted us this chance encounter. We are but passing travelers. Why does Shen Qiongling have someone coming to pick him up, while I have to walk back alone? The thought of the long journey still ahead makes my vision darken. With a sigh, I continued on my way. A carriage came to a stop. Miss Yun. No, her name was Yun Ting. Yun Ting leaned out and asked, would you like a ride, Lord Shi? I nodded and accepted. Yun Ting offered half of his family fortune to pledge his allegiance to me. Step by step, I walked from the countryside to the palace hall. The old master sat high on the dais, looked at me, and laughed. Aji, you've kept me waiting for so long. I lowered my head and said I dared not. The old master slowly descended the steps, walking toward me. She held a young child by the hand and motioned for me to follow. Together we entered this realm of supreme power. The little emperor looked at me with curiosity. Are you also here to assist me, your emperor?